Hello, good morning. For me, it's actually quite later in the evening than I would have liked um, because I was supposed to edit. But when you have the urge to film, you must film. So there's something I want to talk about. I have notes and I also have my computer in front of me. So I'm going to be reading quite a bit, quite a few quotes and referring to my notes. So sorry if I look down a lot. Something that's been on my mind a lot lately in regards to storytelling and the books I'm reading, the media I'm consuming, is food. And food is something that every aspect of it is very political. It's inseparable from the human experience. Everyone by necessity has to eat. So culture and identity are attached very strongly to food. Politics, power, wealth, and status are attached very strongly to food. And food is something that just deeply engages the senses, taste being one of the five primary senses that we're all taught to recognize and identify. But aside from that, smells in a big way, touch and texture, like mouthfeel, sound, the fajita effect, the sizzling, all of these things, obviously, like food is very evocative. I've been thinking lately because of some of the books I've been reading and other, stuff I've been consuming about this fantasy trope of very deeply and very detailed describing every meal. It's mostly present in like fantasy. I want to say also sci-fi. I don't read that much sci-fi, but I'm thinking of I had an 18th century sci-fi phase where I was reading like Jules Verne and authors like that anyway. So I'll also include sci-fi or just speculative fiction in general, let's say. I do like description. I like character descriptions. I'm interested in fashion and clothing. So I like descriptions of clothes a lot of the time. I want to know what people are wearing. I want to know how all the characters look. But I don't... I say that, but I want it written out. I don't want pictures. That's going to be a tangent I don't have time for if I let it be. So I like written descriptions when I'm reading books. I like to really live in the sensory world. But at the same time, I didn't really have an appreciation, especially of food and food descriptions. I'm not like a big foodie person, really. I don't like watching mukbangs or anything like that. I don't find a lot of gratification in reading about meals. I didn't hate it, but it kind of fell in my mind into not pointless description, but just as dressing. Just a way of setting a vibe, you know what I mean? Where I didn't think too much about it. I didn't think it was necessarily important. Within the last year or so, something or two works that have recontextualized how food is discussed and this way that food is described are that last year I read the Iliad by Homer, and I read it by listening to it as an audiobook. And I think specifically that I listened to it made a big impact. And the other thing is I watched a recording of the production Mr. Burns, a post-electric play written by Anne Washburn, starting with the Iliad because, this is a work of storytelling canon, the type of story that other stories will repeatedly reference through, all of the history of literature. Not all of it, because stuff came before it and was, other places in the world at the same time. But literature as we know it. Listening to the Iliad, I felt very connected to the audiences of the past who would have been listening to this as an oral tradition, as something that is recited. In general, I find it very easy to feel a sense of connection to people of ancient societies and of the distant past. I feel very strongly connected to the very first like human ancestor that we all have, the first being who had a brain that functioned like ours function. All these like millennia later, we're still the same species. And I find that very interesting. Because if you look back in history and hear stories of people and how they lived, it's really like they're just like us. And also, listening to it instead of like reading it with my eyes, there's a flow to the narration. And through that flow and through the like management of time as an element of storytelling, I was able to see how these long passages of very sumptuous description had a purpose. It's something that's for the audience to enjoy. There's a purpose in the narrative in that it's reflecting like these cultural mores. Like a lot of these feasts that people have are either sacrifices to the gods, or they are people being punished and also sacrifices. So it'll start with prisoners being captured and then they're executed. And then there's also a sacrifice or a funeral, and that's followed by feasting. And then there are shows of hospitality. Like these characters will go to these princes and kings of whatever and they'll be received, and in hospitality, wonderful meal will be laid out in front of them. So you get to see a little sprinkle of revenge, and that's something that is satisfying in one way. In a narrative, this is a war story, and the drama is juicy. The interpersonal tensions and the wrongdoings of this character and that character, like, the drama is juicy. So you get the satisfaction of like revenge or justice, or sometimes it's like, no, this is not just. And then you get the satisfaction in a more like positive sense of just like, ooh, delicious food. So here's a description from book 1, The Rage of Achilles in the Iliad. Because I just talked about executions, I want to clarify, when they say the heads of the victims, that's referring to cattle that they are slaughtering as a sacrifice to Apollo. And soon as the men had prayed and flung the barley, first they lifted back the heads of the victims, slit their throats, skinned them, and carved away the meat from the thigh bones and wrapped them in fat. A double fold, sliced clean and topped with strips of flesh. And the old man burned these over dried split wood, and over the quarters poured out glistening wine, while young men at his side held 5-pronged forks. Once they had burned the bones and tasted the organs, they cut the rest into pieces, pierced them with spits, and roasted them to a turn and pulled them off the fire. The work done, the feast laid out, they ate well, and no man's hunger lacked a share of the banquet. So there's description of the cuts of meat and how they're prepared. You can kind of like imagine like, ooh, I want this piece or I want that piece. And also something I find of particular importance is that ending line, no man's hunger lacked a share of the banquet. This is something that kind of wraps up every description of feasting that's in the story. There's always enough for everyone. I think that's something that's important to an audience, that they are included. Like there's always enough, there's always plenty. And aside from that aspect of like just the like sensory pleasure and like enjoyment of hearing about these things, the long descriptions also, they give a change of pace to the story. The Iliad has so many descriptions of just fighting and like all the ways people die. And some of them are like very like action. It's like the spear goes through his eye and out his jaw and it pierced his tongue. And it's like, what? They can be very exciting, but they can also be very repetitive. And then there's also that drama going on between Achilles and Hector and all of that, that it can kind of be very heavy at times. So, another description in particular that really caught my attention is it's not a food one. It's in book 18, The Shield of Achilles. Thetis, Achilles' mother, she goes to Hephaestus to have a new set of armor and a new shield created for Achilles. And just being in the world of Hephaestus in general, it has like a way different vibe. Like everything gets really tense. We cut to his home and everything is very chill, very like, it's almost very sci-fi because everything is made of like copper and gold. And there are like women made out of gold who are attending him. And he has all these like machines. It's very like dwarven, if you know what I mean. So it's all very like intriguing and like definitely a different speed from all the events that are leading up to this point. At first, Hephaestus makes a great and massive shield, blazoning well-wrought emblems all across the surface, raising a rim around it, glittering, triple ply with a silver shield strap run from edge to edge and 5 layers of metal to build the shield itself. And across the vast expanse with all his craft and cunning, the god creates a world of gorgeous immortal work. There he made the earth, and there the sky, and the sea, and the inexhaustible blazing sun, and the moon rounding full, and there the constellations, all that crown the heavens, the Pleiades and the Hyades, Orion and all his powers too, and the great bear that mankind also calls the wagon. She wheels on her axis, always fixed, watching the hunter, and she alone is denied a plunge in the ocean's baths. And he forged on the shield 2 noble cities filled with mortal men, with weddings and wedding feasts in one, and under glowing torches they brought forth the brides from the women's chambers, marching through the streets while choir on choir the wedding song rose high, and the young men came dancing, whirling round in rings. And among them flutes and harps kept on their stirring call. Women rushed to the doors, and each stood moved with wonder. And the people massed, streaming into the marketplace, where a quarrel had broken out, and 2 men struggled over the blood price for the kinsman just murdered. One declaimed in public, vowing payment in full. The other spurned him, he would not take a thing, so both men pressed for a judge to cut the knot. The crowd cheered on both, they took both sides, but heralds held them back as the city elders sat on polished stone benches, forming the sacred circle, grasping in the hand the staffs of clear-voiced heralds, and each leapt to his feet to plead the case in turn. I'll stop there, but that goes on for several pages, and there are several more descriptions of just like other little events that are supposedly being delicately like carved and emblazoned into the shield, where it's almost like a portal to bring the audience to a new place. And what's particularly like clever about it is time does not move forward in the narrative. The urgency with which Achilles needs this like armor and this shield, it's not really disrupted, but the audience can take a break from it and from kind of hearing the same sort of things described over and over again, or these like stressful situations, and hear a few like shorter, simpler, interesting little stories until you pull back out of it and then continue the narrative with Thetis and Achilles and everyone else. But it's a moment to like refresh. And while it was happening, I really appreciated it. It did refresh me. So now on to Mr. Burns, a post-electric play written by Anne Washburn. This is a play about culture and the nature of storytelling and how oral histories or the stories we tell as humans are passed down and changed to better suit our culture. I highly recommend seeing this play. If you can see it live, fantastic, do. If you can't, there are a few productions that have been posted on YouTube, and that's how I watched it. I just saw it was released in full, a certain production that some people had done. But for sort of an intro, in the near future, there is some sort of apocalyptic or cataclysmic event where there's a total loss of electricity. Every way that we had to produce it is gone. Anything that runs off electricity is gone. Civilization as we know it has collapsed. But within recent memory is pop culture. So it opens with a group of people sitting around a campfire, talking with each other and entertaining each other by remembering episodes of The Simpsons, trying to remember the plots and the lines, the references, things like that. Then we cut to 7 years later, and a new society is rising up, but people are still in a survivalist mode. And we follow it where we see a group of people who are working together as a troupe of actors. And the plays that they put on are reenactments of Simpsons episodes. In this scene, they're rehearsing, and part of their production is that they also act out commercials. And in those commercials, they depict life before the collapse. There's quite a bit I want to read, but it's pretty disparate. I've highlighted what I feel are the most important lines for getting my point across. Here we have the character Quincy, and she's playing like a romantic partner to this other character, Gibson. And she is talking about her day at work. Quincy, someone is stealing lunches out of the refrigerator. There's a short back and forth on that. Last Friday, they took Raul's leftover Chinese, sweet and sour pork, pineapple fried rice, and his Fritos. Monday, Leslie's pizza pocket. Tuesday, Robbie's quarter pounder with cheese. And Michi brought in a homemade chocolate cake for the office, you know. So moist, thick fudge frosting. And she took a piece, and I came right in as she was putting it out, and I had a piece. This discussion of stealing lunches, it's a way of just bringing up the different options that there used to be for all these different types of food. And then the chocolate cake. And then the chocolate cake is also like, oh, she brought cake for the office. There's enough for everyone. They talk more about the stealing lunches. Gibson says, you don't pack a lunch. No, I eat out. I love pret-a-manger. Their sandwiches are so cute. They're so tightly cut and packaged. I like the roast beef with arugula and parm. I also like the turkey club sandwich. The BLT. It's cold outside, snow outside, but I'm tucked into the corner of the Pret, cozy as can be, with my perfect compact triangle of chicken salad and a hot chocolate and all the rest of the place just gabbling behind me. So there we have abundance of choice, options. It's cold outside. Inside there's heat. They don't have to worry about like camping, sleeping outside that the way they have to do in the present of the show. They don't have to worry about rain and snow. You can be inside warm and cozy. And the chatter of people behind her being comforting and safe. This is kind of a theme in the play. People are very scared of each other. Something about whatever took out the electricity, it seems to have affected people's brain a lot. Gibson, you want me to bring you a glass of Chablis? Or mineral water, if you want a mineral water with a squeeze of lemon in it? Or lime? Or I could get you a grape Fanta, or one of those Italian sodas you like, or a cran raspberry juice, or a Diet Coke. Quincy, with ice? Stage direction, to the audience, broadly. Gibson, of course with ice. Why not with ice? The freezer's chock full of ice. Quincy, sounds dreamy. I'll just have a Chablis. Or no, a Diet Coke. No, a Chablis. God, it's been a long day. This is quite a juicy bit to me. There's a heavy focus on choice as abundance, over in the Iliad, just general abundance. But there was some choice too. Like I was saying, the cuts of meat, how they're cooked. Like, oh, which piece would you like? It's sort of like that. Ooh, we have mineral water. You can have lime or lemon. What do you want? Which one would you pick? And then the ice, because they don't have refrigeration, they can't have ice. Him playing it fully to the audience, like the luxury of ice. The freezer is so chock full of ice. We have more ice than you could ever imagine. They finish rehearsing that bit. A couple of other characters come out, Jenny and Colleen. Jenny says, it's that fine line between tantalization and torture. And I think that's really the thesis of the commercial. You want to be able to like fantasize about it and like describe it enough to really be like, ooh, this is so like satisfying and like gratifying, but not so much that it becomes like bitterness and resentment. Like why can't I have Diet Coke? Not so much that it feels bad and people don't want to come and see the show, because this show is how they live, how they survive in this world. Further down, Gibson says, yeah, but what about that, like, I feel like we're failing to exploit, In commercials, it's not just about feeling cozy and bounty. There was that whole other thing commercials used to do, like, there always used to be that question of identity. Like, it's not just what is the desire, it's who has the desire. I think people are ready for status again. Jenny, you're joking. Gibson, in baby steps, I think people are ready for status. This to me really highlights that this commercial is not a commercial. Because to introduce status is to say, there's not enough for everyone. This is just for you. This is exclusive. It can kind of ruin the fantasy. When there's no man's hunger lacked a share of the banquet. In the opening notes on how the play should be performed, the author really explains the commercial and its purpose. The commercial shouldn't be performed satirically, as we currently do when we send up a commercial. That wouldn't be of interest to them. It's reality porn. Because we in our culture will commonly satirize commercials and pop hits, it's tempting to bring that spirit of satire to the commercial and to the pop medley. But it's never interesting to satirize something which isn't powerful. And in this new reality, commercials and corporations are non-existent. And there are no record companies or pop stars. The commercial is best approached as tantalizing reality porn. Quincy's a good actress who is selling not products, but the memory and the experience of lost foods. The commercial is doing something specific for the audience. And it's a way of engaging with this trope that made it very clear its purpose to me. And that gave me an understanding and an appreciation in combination with reading the Iliad. It's not something like thoughtless or like self-indulgent of the author. It's not excluding the author's satisfaction, but it's not solely for the author's satisfaction. When you read stories that are not well written or not as thoughtful about how to use these descriptions, and they're going on like long purple prose that are not interesting or satisfying or used to draw the reader into the world and the experience, it can be easy to like write everything off as like, oh, just throw that all away. None of this is important. But when you see it done well, it's like, oh my God, my mind is expanded. So That's what's been on my mind. That's what's been interesting me. But that's going to be it for me. If you like the video, like the video. If you have something to say, comment in the comments. If you'd like to see more from me, you can subscribe. And goodbye. With a silver with a silver shield strap, run for with a this is hard.